Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mark Reid's stream, and we're going to be having on Hussein, who I had a debate against. The topic was Islam. Today, we're going to be sort of focusing on what I'm bringing to the table, my worldview and the atheist worldview and the, atheism and a worldview, but the secular worldview, I guess. So I'd like to give a big thank you and welcome Hussein. Hussein, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, not a problem. So I had a lot of fun in the debate, and it was obviously me trying to defend Islam and like if it's oppressive or not. So that was fun. I mean, personally, I didn't obviously think it was oppressive, but a lot of the comments, disagreed. So, but there seems to be like a pretty big atheist community as far as modern day debate goes. So it was pretty fun though, interesting.
I think modern day debate is very mixed. I know there are a lot of theists that I've run into, but you'll probably notice not a lot of, say, the Christian theists may go to a debate between Islam and atheism kind of thing, and the same. Not a lot of Islamic theists will go to a debate between atheism and Christianity, for instance. So it may just have been sort of the metrics of what you're seeing, because you'd probably understand that most Christians would say Islam is oppressive. That doesn't necessarily make them atheists, but that's what they would say. So you may have been getting a bit of that as well.
Of course. A lot of Western Christians, like they kind of have that allegiance per se with atheists and stuff, or agnostics or liberals in general when it comes to that. So
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. So,
I do understand the focus was on me because you didn't, to keep on topic, and I totally understand in a debate you may have all kinds of questions about somebody's worldview, and it's not on topic. You can't talk about it. You can't, because that's just not what you do in a debate. I totally get that, Hussein. So, I'm happy to answer any questions about my particular worldview and where I'm coming from. If you do have them, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah. So something I actually in the debate I prepared like a kind of like a counter, depending on what you guys were talking about, but I think it'd come up. So and it was going to be kind of exploring that. So for example, like I tried to make like the case that even economically, like a woman staying at home in a relationship may actually be more efficient, or like utility in that per se. And I was trying to speak to like utilitarianism. So, and that's what I was really wanting to ask you on, because I find like a lot of atheists. So if you're going to not believe in God, right, then you have to have morals somehow, right? There's only like one atheist I've ever watched where they say, oh, well, I'm, what is it? They think it's like ice. It was a white supremacist guy, not a white supremacist. What is it? White nationalist guy. He did a debate.
White nationalist,
with Daniel, and he said it's like flavors of ice cream. Like I can't necessarily say, chocolate's wrong, but I prefer vanilla. And he was explaining it that way, which was really interesting.
Okay, that's a bit on the nose. So. Technically, you're true, and mostly that's absolutely true. You do need some kind of moral, at least, so some kind of moral system as an atheist, or, but you could, like, there are a few atheists that I sort of have heard of that are moral nihilists. They don't believe in valuing morals at all. So it's a real mixed bag, and the reason why is because atheism's just the answer to one question. It's just a position on one proposition, and that's, is there a God? And the atheist doesn't believe there's a God. Rarely you'll find someone just be an atheist, for instance, like, because if you're talking about morals, atheism has been described as a moral wasteland, and that's largely true. That is true. There's no moral pronouncements in atheism. There's nothing that gives you any morals from atheism, because that's not what it's designed to do. It's designed to answer one proposition. So most atheists will be something else as well as atheists. And and a lot of atheists are secular humanists. And that's where your you get a lot of this, and secular humanism has utilitarianism and consequentialism in it. So it leans largely on those two things. Not to say that intentionality isn't important when you're
Of
talking about
course.
consequentialism. A lot of it is, well, if the consequences are bad, then the action is bad, including the intention. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I
Yeah.
think intention is important, but I'm not just an atheist, and my moral system is very well developed. I'm a meta-ethical relativist, which means that as long as you have a framework that we can agree on for morality, then we can start to make some objective decisions about what is good and what is bad in virtue of that framework. And that's where I'm coming from.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a fair bit of sense. I guess like I'm having like a debate next week with Aaron Ra on is
Oh, yeah.
religion or Islam good for society? So
Right.
and much like the debate with you and
Mm.
Starlight, I was trying to explain that like rules have a reason for them, and
Sure.
you know they could be considered oppressive. However, like if there's a reason for them and that reason makes sense and it does well for society, like who are you to
Mhm.
judge in a way? And if you're a moral relativist or a subjectivist, like it's kind of weird to be like, well, it's wrong that they're doing this, but I also don't believe in objective morality. So like where's the ground to say that it's wrong if there's a reason for it, right?
Sure.
So I didn't get a chance to really press on that. But I guess that's what I was wanting more like to know. Like, so if you think like, you know, obviously like God doesn't exist and that's a separate
Yeah.
question. And
Yeah,
then you
sure.
have, you know, moral relativism, like you're saying, and a meta ethics. If there's like a framework for why like these more conservative societies are having rules on men and women and the way that they act, if there's like a legitimate reason, isn't that fair then?
Well, by legitimate, it depends what you mean by legitimate. I would love there to be something objective, something outside of the human psyche to say, hey, these rules are there and, you know, they're inviolate in some kind of objective way. But um, I don't think that's the case. That's the
Yeah.
problem. But so what secular humanists do is will generally go for some sort of utility. In my case, it's well-being, and a lot of people
Yeah.
do agree on this one. I believe that Sam Harris first sort of really pushed the idea of well-being. So we sort of have to balance as well the well-being of the individual and the well-being of society. So if we can agree, like just you and me can agree that human well-being is important, we can then say, hey, you know, injuring me is definitely bad for my well-being,
Yeah.
right? So we can definitely say that. Now, and you know, morality is one of the most complex, and this is why I wanted to talk to you, because it's so complex, you know, rather than
Yeah.
just write comments. It's just so complex. But we can then sort of go, well, what rules can we put into place that will contribute to the well-being of society without violating some rights for people that ensure their well-being?
Sure.
Because secular humanism leans heavily on science, scientific theory, and things like that. So psychologists and, of course, you know, anatomists and doctors, there's certain things humans need to have well-being. You know, they used to call it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but they don't anymore, because they don't want to place one above another because we need them in the same thing. But they're
Yeah.
physical, like shelter, food, you know, things like that. But there's also the psychological ones, which is safety, sort of security,
Yeah.
self-actualization. There's a whole list of sort of things that, and, you know, sort of bodily autonomy, the right to sort of say what some person does to you.
Yeah.
So these rights, unless you're violating somebody else's rights, they shouldn't really be infringed upon, because you need them for well-being. So when we take that away is when someone commits a crime, and we need to stop them from violating another person's well-being, essentially.
Yeah.
So objectively, we can sort of say, hey, if you tell me to, if you force me to do something with my body that I don't want to do, you've violated that right, kind of thing. It's not good for the well-being of either me or society to force some person to do that. So that's a problem. And this is how we get sort of the morals that are coming down based upon what's good for people and what's good for society and how it benefits us. And there's going to be disagreements, but as long as we can agree that humans need well-being and that is important, then we can work within a framework of objectivity. It's just coming to that framework is subjective. You've got to care about humans. And the problem with morality is just because people do care about humans, there's nothing objective saying they ought to. It's kind of, to my mind, it's just, well, you're a human, so psychologically you do. But that is subjective. That's a relative thing to what you are. If you were born as a gerbil, you wouldn't care about humans. It is in the mind as far as I'm concerned. But that's not to say just because it isn't objective, it isn't incredibly important, because societies are important and our welfare is important. So that's how I arrive at a morality, and it's based upon well-being. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of it is, in a way, well-being and like utilitarianism. Then, how come there's not a lot of atheists, or at least to you, like? So I always really liked Kant, because Kant is like, and I guess like here's the weird thing when you think about it, like a lot of atheists, like, and I guess this is kind of like, is it John Stuart Mill or Bentham? I think maybe it's Jeremy Bentham, but he like one of the utilitarians. He said like there's the master of pleasure and then the master of pain or something, and like avoiding pain.
Right.
So it seems like a lot of atheists, for some reason, like they like that type of more subjective worldview versus like Kant, where Kant is like, and this may just be like a personality difference between like
his deontology,
the atheist and like a religious person, because like even as a religious person, I can look at Kant and I can be like, this guy's awesome, like he's a religion for atheist people, but with that comes like very strict rules and like a very strict way to behave, and it doesn't appeal to a lot of like atheist type people, Sorry,
can I
let
no problem at all. No problem. Sorry,
just a second.
No problem at all, Hussein. Not a problem, mate.
Sorry.
All oughts are is statements, Snake. That's interesting. I think Hume would disagree with you, mate. I really do. And I would kind of be inclined to agree. Hello.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Just saying hello to a few absolutely marvelous people in my audience, like Jay Pasick, who is a boss.
Oh yeah, hello, atheist chat.
Well, not everybody is atheist in my chat, but yeah, no problem at all. So Kant's ideas of deontology are kind of like, they're almost moral universalism. So, if lying is bad, then lying is bad in every single context. It doesn't matter what context it is. But you start to introduce things into it, like, for instance, if you have like, family hiding from criminals that have come to kill them, and you lie about them being in your house, is that a good act? And Kant would say no, even though the consequences of that would be both you and your family die, kind of thing. And I would argue that is a good act. That definitely is, because you are aiding in the well-being of not only your family but yourself. Because
it's extreme in a way.
What do you mean? Yeah, it's very rigid and sort of you get into these situations where you're doing, the outcomes are horrendous, but Kant thinks that's a good thing. And I got to admit, I really dislike that about Kant, that any action, regardless of the consequences of it, is good or bad based upon its sheer intent. And I really don't think that's the case. I think that if I was to lie to protect your life or my family's life, that would be a good act. That would be
Yeah.
something good.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, from what I understand in like Islam, like there's all three. So it's like intent. You should take an intent into a factor. Consequences is a factor, and then also like, is this a moral deed? So there's like all three kind of like wrapped in one, and that's also kind of like why I really liked when I was learning philosophy, like Aristotle, because it's kind of like it's ignoring the consequences in a sense like Kant, but it's also intentions somewhat matter too. But it is obviously like it's not practical at all. And so people largely disregard it because essentially you're just like, oh, like, well, who's a good human being, you know? And then like with modern deconstructism, like they deconstruct every hero. So like no one's a good human being and then everything, you know what I mean? Like there's that nihilism coming. So it's like, well, oh, I can't emulate anyone. So in the modern world, especially, like Aristotle is really garbage, unfortunately. But then, like when you get to utilitarianism, I don't really like it in a sense because it's so Machiavellian in the sense that, like, you can justify anything if it's good for the majority, you know?
Yeah, and sort of and that's why sort of there has to be some rights that utilitarianism cannot, overcome, that it cannot infringe upon. Because if you want to say, hey, the well-being of society is the most important thing, you can do horrendous things to people ensuring that is the case, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or if the well-being of an individual is paramount, then you could let people get away with all kinds of things in order to terrible things for society to ensure that their well-being is preserved. So I do take utilitarianism, consequentialism, and intent into, because I understand that if you go to help somebody and you basically perform CPR, do it wrong and hurt them, it was still a good act to try and help save their life, kind of thing. I understand this. So I think that's a good idea, but it's what is good and what is bad that you have to address. Like, what are the base levels of what is good defined as, and what evil or harm or whatever you want to call it is defined as. So that's why I have to, because I don't have the solution of, well, whatever a God dictates is good, or in their nature is good, or whatever, however it's phrased, or however the belief is, and whatever's against it is bad. I have to have a framework in order for which to operate. And what we're looking for as secular humanists, I guess I can only speak for myself, but as a secular humanist, what I'm looking for is a compatible moral system with mine. I don't need everybody to believe in my moral system. I just don't need to. I can even work with someone completely selfish. Someone completely selfish, I can put to them that it's in your best interest to help society and people around you, because if you need it to be reciprocated, if you need help and you live in this society, then that's in your best interest. I can even work with that. I'm not.
It's like the foundation of liberalism, like where we're all in the agreed contract, and you can, like, the difference between a conservative is like people are selfish. So you have to argue why it's good for them. Liberals would say, well, you can argue that and somewhat coerce them into helping each other because it will be beneficial to them in the long run as well.
Right. And of course, I'm going to argue for my moral system, but that doesn't mean I can't work with somebody who is extreme conservative and selfish, because they understand that society breaking down is bad for them. So you can get to altruism by pure self-interest kind of thing. I don't take that route, but you can get there. So you know, I don't need everyone to believe in my moral system. I just need compatible moral systems in my view, kind of thing.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So if we have this conversation again, then so I need to look at some more ways. Do you think religion's good for society then, in a sense?
No, no, I don't. I think it's not good for society as all. Mostly because of it provides a dead end as far as questioning is concerned, in my opinion. Because when we're looking for why this happens or why that happens, or the answers behind these massive questions, when you put a god there, it's like a block. You can't. There's an inability to explore more, and so it's for that reason that I think that I don't think it's good for society to sort of. Well, I mean, it depends on the religion you're talking about. I mean, you know, sort of there's modern religions
I'll come
that
get him
you
right
know
now.
they just
Sorry.
have no problem. There's modern
Just one
religions
moment.
that
I
sort
just
of
have to
have.
pull him in.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just have to go get him. The dog.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry.
You don't believe in morals, you believe in ethics. So you don't believe in morals for
So sorry about that, Mark.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Yeah, what was I talking about? I've forgotten now.
So sorry, you were saying that it leads to religion will lead to essentially dead ends where people don't question.
Yeah, so some are sort of innocuous. They believe in the scientific method and things like that. But you do get a lot of, you know, religious people who will give the answer to a question about our reality as God, and that will never ought to even be investigated, and that sort of grates against my idea of sort of humanity exploring and discovering as much as possible.
So
it really does.
I guess I have a couple questions on that. So I'd love to hear, like, one, why you don't believe in God, and then two, but while we're on the topic, I feel like whenever I watch like atheists, like I tried to watch like Cosmic Skeptic or Rationality Rules,
Sure.
just to explore like why they believe what they believe. In a sense, like at the end of the day, they're like exploring these questions, and then the answer just comes to nothing. Like, or like they don't know, or they'll heavily rely on like a current scientific or psychological thing. But then like the data will shift or change, or in like a couple years, like the science may prove it's wrong. Like, have you ever taken like a philosophy of science course?
No, I've never taken a philosophy of science.
So essentially, like, I have a friend who's a psychology major, right? He's actually like a doctorate. He got his doctorate, right? But he's like black in America, and there's like a lot of racism, right? So his whole thing was on racism. So he's like personally affected by a couple instances of racism, and like it drove essentially his entire career and all his studies and all his like whole doctorate essay was on racism, right? So you could like argue that all his work in a way is corrupted, or just through that biased lens, right? And then it gets to like the modern education system, where like there is a push to, it's not necessarily like an agenda, it's like it's a partially agenda with like the people involved, but then it's also the fact that you need to get something novel or new. So they'll push studies that may they're saying like, oh, there's, you know, this is psychologically, this is good for everyone, but in reality it's not. It's just something that's novel. They'll never do like repeat studies. So I find like the weird obsession with science for atheists, I don't know, not cringe per se. Like I get why they're doing it.
No, that's fine.
But at the same time, like there's problems with that as well. So sure. I guess like for someone to be like an atheist and question God, right? It's always weird that like a lot of these atheist people will never question like science per se, where like maybe a religious person is questioning science too much, right? And not questioning maybe like in being introspective of their faith. So I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I mean, the first question was why I don't believe in God, and I've never encountered anything that would make me even slightly believe in a God, and more to that, usually a God is an agent of some kind with a mind, and from what I know about minds, how they are emergent from a brain, the idea of a mind without a brain is completely incoherent to me. Um, the structures that go into producing the neural patterns that a mind comes out of, for someone to suggest that is somehow removed is like, it doesn't make any sense to me as I understand a mind. And we've only ever seen minds with brains. If someone could demonstrate a mind without a brain to me, something operating, in ether or something, I would probably change my position to, I don't know if there's a God or not. But with the whole idea of a mind without anything to run it on or anything there, that is why I say there is no God, because that concept just does not make any sense to me whatsoever. Your other thing was the problems with science, and science does have problems, and one of them you did mention, it's the lack of repeat studies. Absolutely. So this leads us into the question of methodology, so the study of the methods that we use to secure the information that we do. And although science does have flaws, it's certainly not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think that, sort of papers produced with errors, and the problems that we've had with lack of repeat studies, the problems that we've had in studies that have been overturned, it tries to be self-correcting. So everything's up for questioning in science. That's fine. You can question science. It should be questioned. That's how we do it. The problem is that no one has a better methodology for finding out what is true in reality and what is not.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Well, I don't disagree with the scientific method. I guess it's just like
right.
It's just like there's for example, like when I learned evolution in school, right? I always questioned like, I can get how adaptation is a thing, but I don't get, for example, like how something that is just logically inconsistent could actually happen. So like an example would be like, how does a fish, right? It needs to be in water to survive, right? How does that become a reptile that is out of water? You know what I mean? Because that's what they're saying the connection is. And that's just like, it's like having a square circle. How does that exist? Like it can't, it's logically inconsistent.
If I could show you a fish that can breathe air, would you be more inclined to believe evolution?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not like necessarily against evolution, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I was just saying, like, when I questioned that.
Oh, my apologies.
School, people would be like, "Oh, well, so you don't think evolution exists? Like, what do you like?"
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
But there is a fish that can breathe air, and actually they find it up trees. Look up the mud skipper. Basically, its swim bladder is acting as a lung. It basically has evolved this swim bladder to act like a lung. So it's got both lungs and gills, and it basically can breathe air, walks around on the surface, kind of thing. It's a fish, and it even climbs trees. So they'll find these things up trees. It's an amazing evolutionary trait that has come out. And so what used to be a swim bladder probably started to work to breathe air, much like the mud skipper. We had lungs and gills. And then as mutations happened, sort of we didn't need the gills. So the ones without gills survived and the ones with lungs did. And over an incredible amount of time, that became our primary breathing function, and the gills just went away, basically. We didn't need them anymore. And that's probably what happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get the explanation. It's just like there's like the, what do they call it? The law of gaps or something, or gaps of
God of the
theists
gaps.
use it. Theists use it. They say it's like the problem of gaps. And then atheists will say, well, the time will, there's so many years.
Maybe.
Say it again.
Missing links, maybe.
Yeah, like the missing links of evolution, or like, like no one really disagrees that adaptation happens. We're just saying like, show me like the actual connections, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so then they'll say like, well, that's the problem of the gaps. And then they'll say, oh, it's solved through the timing. There's so much time that happened, and there's only so many bones and stuff we can recover,
Yeah, and the problem is when we find sort of a link, a missing link kind of thing, it then becomes, well, what's in between that link that we found and the thing previous? So if you're talking about sort of humans coming from primates, for instance, we find sort of Homo habilis tool users early on kind of thing. And then they sort of ask, well, what's in between that and the primate? And then we find, sort of Lucy, which is Australopithecus afarensis, which, to be honest, that sort of that skeleton, we cannot determine whether it's a primate or a human. Like, it is solidly in between. And then they sort of ask, well, what's in between that and the primate kind of thing? So this gap is always, you're getting more and more and more in between. And there's been so many fossils found that are sort of in between humans and apes. It's hard to sort of go, well, we've got to find every single transitional fossil, because really everything is transitional. Everything is changing.
Yeah, I have another question on that too. So another thing that always was interesting. So say, for example, you see like cave drawings, right? So what I also think is weird about science is, and this can go for like evolution too. So for example, I think there was like a story where they found some bones and they created a dinosaur, and they actually found out that it was really like a tiger or something, and like some other animal, and they morphed it together, but it wasn't actually ever a dinosaur. They made like a fake dinosaur. And
I'm not familiar with that one. There has been like bones put together incorrectly and things like that in the early days of paleontology. But, as I said, science is self-correcting. So people have gone through it and said, hey, this is the wrong configuration for the bones. Let's correct this.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one, though. I really
well, I'm just saying, like, I guess, like, I'm just being, like, in a way, like, skeptical of that stuff. So, and what the example I was going to give is, like, so you know how they have, like, cave drawings or something? So it's really weird to me, like, to assume, like, you know how, like, they'll have records. You can, like, go watch or read something from, like, the 1800s, right? And you'll talk to like a modern person, they'll be like, oh, they're in the 1800s, they're all idiots, blah, 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 blah. But then you can go read like a diary, and it's like a very thought out, like everything they're saying makes sense in context of like that person's life or whatever. And it seems very weird. But then, like, for example, you have like the whole study of like anthropology, and then they'll say like, oh, look at this cave drawing of a horse. Like, oh, that means there was a horse god. And like, no one can confirm that this thing means a horse god or there's a horse mythology, you know what I mean? But then they'll like invent this narrative or story, and then they'll write a book, it gets posted and sells, and then like now we have this thing which we can never confirm is real or not because no one lived there during that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So first off, people who lived ages ago weren't stupid. They weren't idiots. They were ignorant, and I got to really sort of clarify the difference between ignorance and stupidity. So, just because I'm ignorant of how, quantum mechanics on a real fundamental level works, all of the equations and stuff, doesn't mean that I'm stupid. I'm just ignorant of that, right? So the scientific knowledge that we have has all been built upon the shoulders of people who knew less, who didn't know as much, who were more ignorant than us, and we've compiled this into, a working knowledge. And so, it's not their fault that they're ignorant of things that we know today. We only know that today because people in the past figured it out. Louis Pasteur and Charles Darwin and all these people, they figured it out. So, but to say that Charles Darwin was ignorant of quantum theory is absolutely he was. He was ignorant of DNA. He didn't know what DNA was. He had no idea what DNA was. But stuff like him making predictions sort of shows that he was right. Like he predicted a bird with unfused wing fingers and that would have teeth. And then we found Archaeopteryx, a fossil with unfused wing fingers and teeth. Like he was really on the money when it came to his predictions. Yeah, when we say, hey, the people long ago were ignorant, they kind of were. They didn't know what they were doing. Like medicine was in an infancy. They used to put all kinds of things on wounds, probably infecting them. They were really ignorant, but that's understandable because that doesn't mean they're stupid. They were quite smart. That's the difference. Just because you're ignorant of something doesn't mean you're stupid. Yeah. And the thing about books, when you said they publish books, in the scientific field, books don't mean anything. Anybody can publish a book on anything. I could publish a book on quantum mechanics, even though I know nothing about it. There's nothing special about a book published. It's papers that are peer reviewed that are the thing that scientists pay attention to. Books literally don't mean anything. Anybody can write a book. That's not really what we look at when we look at scientific studies.
Okay. I have a question then. Is like, so, and I know I'm actually, let me just say it. So, if I could show you like that, there's like an evolutionary biological reason for like that human beings, like for example, they do believe in God, right? Like most human beings, for example, believe in God per studies, and like if there was an evolutionary biological thing in our DNA for some reason compelling us to believe in God, and that's why like the majority of societies all have done that, yada yada yada. Like, is that like not any evidence to you then, or like how does an atheist like rectify that if science is saying that?
Yeah, so I think that there is a predilection for humans to believe in things bigger than themselves, to believe in authority figures bigger than themselves to be presented, and we seem to be uncomfortable with not knowing the answers to things, sort of an inherent curiosity, I would certainly say. But whether or not we have a predilection to believing in a God isn't really an argument for a God existing. We also have a predilection for believing in ghosts. A lot of people believe in ghosts for no apparent reason. It seems to be something that we do. We assign reasons when we don't have a reason for knowing what it is that has caused a phenomenon. We assign reason to it. A lot of people believe in aliens. A lot of people believe in all kinds of things. It doesn't really speak to whether that belief is true.
Okay. So just because there is the belief, you don't think it's true. So, okay.
Well,
if there's like if there's like scientific evidence like within a holy book or like a prophet predicted stuff and it became true, is that just like a lucky guess then, or is that like you wouldn't find those things true or proof, I guess?
I think the predictions that I see, especially within the Bible and stuff, that people point out predictions. Number one, they're very vague. They can be interpreted a lot of different ways. Their language is very hyperbolic, so they can be interpreted. And the other one is that people at the time could have known about whatever it is that they're saying at the time. Because as I said, they're not stupid people. These people that wrote these books were very, very intelligent, so they could observe things and sort of. So somebody sort of once said to me, of the Bible, oh, how did they know there were mountains under the sea? And number one, they had boats. Number two, water's clear in certain parts. You can see the seafloor in certain parts. It's not a great stretch for a moderately intelligent sailor to go, hey, there's these massive rocks under the sea. There's mountains there. So I think that's like sort of that kind of thing is a case of, yeah, well, people may have known that at the time. That isn't special knowledge or anything.
Okay.
So it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, if someone gives an equation for gravity in a holy book, well, yeah, that's a completely different story. It's something very specific, can't be interpreted any other way. And it's certainly stuff that wouldn't have been able to be found out at the time. I mean, I wouldn't say common knowledge, but, these people writing holy books, they essentially, religion was the first form of science. It was providing explanations as to why things were happening.
Yeah.
And people who could write were very intelligent at the time. So, it might have been knowledge that somebody found out, they listened to and said, let's write this down. I think it's sort of hard to tell.
Is as far as like have you got to like any chance to review like cosmological arguments, like the Kalam argument or the consequentialist argument and things like that? Are those
the Kalam, the original Kalam, doesn't have God in any of the premises or the conclusion.
No, yeah, it doesn't. It's William Lane Craig modified it. It's essentially saying there has to be a necessary being or a necessary thing. And then
this is where you get confusing, because a necessary being, like being in philosophy, isn't necessarily an agent. It's just a necessary state of being, basically. So when you sort of say a necessary being and you're talking about a necessary agent, the question is, why isn't an agent? Why must it be intelligent and, sort of all of these different things? I think William Lane Craig kind of smuggles a lot into his Kalam by saying, hey, it must be timeless, spaceless, eternal, and he doesn't really give satisfactory reasons.
He kind of sneaks it in always at the end. He's like, oh, see, like these things, and then now you have to accept all these propositions of like a personal God. And
exactly. So
I mean, I understand as a theist why he's doing it and how he's saying like, okay, so if I can get you to at least accept this stuff, the next logical conclusion is that. But he's never proven really the connection.
And the other problem with the Kalam is it's just if the universe had a beginning or not. So there's a few physicists like Sean Carroll who suggest the first moment in the singularity under the effects of huge amounts of gravity and mass could be stretched out to an eternity. So the universe had no actual beginning. It is eternal. Now, I'm not sure I believe that, because it's just a hypothesis. Nobody knows where the universe came from. But if they are correct and the universe is eternal, well, that's, premise one of Kalam just thrown out the window there.
Yeah,
Kalam doesn't
I feel like you would just have to modify it though, no? Right? Because you're just saying, well, God is eternal. God is holding up the essentially time and space that was created. Therefore, there is a God because something would have to come before that and then create time, at least, and space, And that is the eternal.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Kalam basically says that things that begin must have a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. That's the entire Kalam. I'm not sure how you would modify that to say, because if you sort of say even things that are eternal must have a cause, things that are not eternal must have a cause, then if the universe is eternal, it still doesn't.
I'm sorry. What I'm saying is, if it was internal, right? Like, if they're, I guess, like what they're saying is like, so, like the worlds, the planets, all that stuff, right? Like that has a start. You could like like a theist could try and rectify that. Is all I mean.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to say that the everything that begins has a cause, the formation of the planets and material things in the universe had a cause, therefore the material began to exist, therefore the material things in the universe has a cause. The problem is that cause is the Big Bang.
Yeah.
So you've got the cause, like, that solves that particular argument. And I mean, the only way you could really apply it in my mind is to
the Big Bang, that would be the next
Well, that's the whole point. If time is stretched out in that singularity eternally, before is the wrong question to apply, right? So if you think about there's no before, it's eternal, it goes forever. And the whole idea of before, if the Big Bang and whatever sort of preceded that instant is the beginning of time, right? So time, when we think of it, is just a fourth dimension of the local presentation of space-time. It's local to our universe.
Yeah.
So if for instance multiverse theory is correct, and I'm not sure I do believe that either, because it is a hypothesis among many about where the universe came from, sort of M theory, if you're familiar with it. If that was where the time started, saying what is before that, it's a nonsensical question, because there is no time before. There's no time to be a before in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because time would be like right when it started. I get it.
Right. So there is no before. Before doesn't. It's like sort
It's
of
an
asking,
illogical question.
right. It's like asking what color a sound is. It does not make any sense to ask that question. It just
makes sense.
doesn't. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So that kind of, I guess, like, it sounds like then to most atheists is like there's no proof that any theist could ever bring to prove God, other than like somehow like a God actually coming down and just being like, I exist, like in your brain,
Well, possibly. I mean, it depends on the circumstances. It depends on a lot of things. But I think that sort of God displayed himself apparently in the Old Testament a fair bit with the burning bush and all of that kind of things. And I believe that Islam still thinks the Old Testament is correct and accurate. So things like this, he used to do stuff like that all the time, like near constantly. And I think that if something like that was done, I usually talk to Christians. So if someone did fly to the moon and cut it in half, for instance, as one of the miracles in the Quran, that would definitely convince me. If somebody supernaturally rode on a I know flying horse is a really bad translation, but if someone did that and cut the moon in half with a sword, that would be a lot of evidence towards a God actually existing. But until this happens, it's pointless sort of going, hey, this would convince me, because these sort of things never seem to happen.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, essentially, like, if there was a God to exist, right, every generation or every couple of generations, you have to, like, essentially send down a new prophet just to do something like that, because people need the proof consistently.
Yeah, I don't think every generation. I think that sort of now we've entered a stage of, because recording knowledge in the past was really problematic. There was stories, there was oral stories. Then they got turned into written stories, which were very poetic and not a lot of depth to them. There's records from all kinds of civilizations about all kinds of different gods and what they're doing. And, polytheism turned to monotheism. And then that is now sort of the modern religions. Now we don't have that problem. We have definitive sort of, records of what has happened and what hasn't. I can look up how many plane crashes there were last year. It's not like I have to rely on somebody telling me who may live over in that country, and do they really come from there? Are they living there now? It's not the same as it used to be. So I don't see that as a problem for
I have a question then, like, what about like so, like, do you think there's like any supernatural phenomenon? Because like people do have like records of that stuff happening all the time, but then most people just hand wave it away as like crazy.
Right. I don't believe in anything supernatural. I don't. So the question you're asking is naturalism, right? So naturalists believe that there is only natural things. Supernatural doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. I don't know that for sure. I don't preclude supernatural things, but I don't believe in anything supernatural because none has ever been presented to me. So,
all right, Mark, we're going to go to a haunted castle and something supernatural is going to happen, and then you're going to believe in God.
Sure. I mean, that's actually been sort of challenged to me, sort of go into a Ouija board in a haunted house kind of thing. And, it's just the things that I see and sort of look at from people saying the supernatural exists aren't supernatural. I've had people sort of say, hey, I've been to church and, one of my legs was shorter than the other. And that's a well-known carnival trick. Like you just pull a shoe off. It's just a trick. And a lot of these things are tricks. A lot of these stage magicians do stuff that absolutely look magic, David Blaine and people like that you go, how could that possibly be? But it is just a trick. So I'm cognizant that things that look like supernatural things have to be subject to investigation. We have to find out if that's what they are or not. And unfortunately, no supernatural thing has ever held up to scrutiny. I think it was James Randi famously offered a $1 million pound prize. Sorry, he was in England. It was £1 million prize to anybody that could demonstrate under scientifically controlled conditions supernatural abilities of any type at all. And unfortunately, nobody ever passed that. Like, it not even came close. Like, it was really, once we control the conditions and ask people to produce supernatural things, the abilities vanish. So, maybe someone is out there with supernatural. Maybe there's a faith healer who can actually heal people, but I know they're not working at hospitals.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't believe in I know what you're talking about. I feel like anyone who would go to that is like a con artist. So, and I mean, I am also in a way skeptical of like supernatural stuff, because typically, like in the past, it's like supernatural stuff happened to someone. It wasn't like someone doing the supernatural act, right? Or like when people recall like almost like these true experiences, it was always something like that. It really wasn't like, oh, I went to a magician and this magician did something, right? Because like that's usually like if there's another human involved, I would always lean with you, like you're saying, that it's a con artist or it's a trick.
Right. So, but how do you know that something supernatural happened to them?
I mean, I personally haven't had anything supernatural to me yet, but I'm open to the possibility, I guess. So, and I'm open to like, I guess like the way I look at it is like, if there's all these recorded histories or events of like ghosts, certain supernatural events, like, is it A, they're all lying, or B, like it just actually has happened before? You know what I mean? Like I would.
No. That's not the only two possibilities.
What would be the other option?
They're just
or they
wrong.
think it happened, but it didn't happen.
They saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard about that too. I think so.
Yeah. So a lot of times, as I said, like humans, we don't like not having explanations for things. It grates on us. We hate it. And sometimes, well, a lot of the time, people sort of give a reason because it's better than I don't know what is causing that kind of thing. We assign stuff to it, kind of thing. Like you hear a sound in your house, you don't know what it is, and you think, oh, a burglar. And that's what your mind does, because that's what humans do. We assign case probabilities to things because that's a survival mechanism. It's because the person that heard the rustle in the bushes and went, oh, tiger, is the one that survived, and the person that said, I don't know what that is, didn't survive.
Okay. So
I think we sort of
yeah, I get what you're saying. Sorry.
No.
If you don't think religion's good for society, but it seems like a lot of people need it, or it produces some good factors or behaviors, what would you replace it with if not that? Because I know you're going to say like obviously secular humanism, but like that doesn't have like a defined rule, like don't drink alcohol, or like, oh, don't do drugs, right?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, you're right, it doesn't. But it does, but sort of, laws and morals are two totally different things. Like, so morally, sort of it's wrong to drink alcohol or in excess, kind of thing, because alcohol doesn't have a severe reaction in moderation. and things like that. Yeah, it's immoral, but sort of the right to autonomy, like to be able to decide what you want to do, overrides that well-being, because in order to be well, we have to allow people to decide what they want to do, or else people aren't going to be well. The idea of bodily autonomy is so great, it's written into the laws. But morally, it's not illegal to go round and be a complete jackass to everybody as well. That's not illegal. But it is immoral. So when we're talking about laws and morals, they're two totally different things.
But
and there's things that are
it used to be that morals were laws in a way, or laws reflected the morality of the time.
No, it's never been illegal to be a jackass. Like, and let me tell you, there's been jackasses all throughout history.
That's true. Excuse me, not the jackass part, but like I guess what I mean is, like, adultery used to be a crime even under like secular countries, or
right.
Because there's just punishments for things that they want to de-incentivize.
Right, but sort of what you've got to remember is that we live in the best time that has ever existed in history. We have the happiest people. We have the most comfortable lifestyle. We sort of we live in this time that we have all of these amazing things, and it's due to the way that we've sort of set it up so that people do have well-being. They do have the ability to say, hey, this is what I want for me. This is what I don't want for me. Those freedoms that we have contribute to our well-being. They give us security that my choices are my own and things won't be enforced upon me. And that's important.
That's why I think it's I guess ironic, because I think it's funny because the way I was going to bring this up in the debate, but
go for it.
So you're saying that, but I don't actually agree, in the sense that I would say we think we have this freedom, and in reality, like, and even liberals agree with this. You know how like it takes a village to raise a boy, that kind of thing, or like a man. We use coercion all the time. We use social media. We use all these stigmas and societal pressures to encourage people to behave a certain way. So you can say like we have the freedom, but like in America, or like or culturally too, right? So like, for example, in Germany, everyone loves beer, right? And that's a cultural thing. And like the average person will just do what the average person does, right? So if you're in Germany, you're gonna love beer. If you're in China or Japan, you're gonna probably love like sake, right? It's just like there's these cultural things that it's gonna coerce everyone to behave a way. So like most of these people are just NPCs and just following the typical road. So in a way, like, do they have freedom? And then they're not utilizing their freedom? And then two, now we're just coercing them to behave in this way that is almost detrimental to them,
Okay. So in my worldview, nobody is an NPC. I reject that entirely. There is nobody not involved in where humanity is going. Everybody is important. And the reason why, and I sort of covered this very briefly in a stream, everybody is at the center of their own story. Everybody is living out their own story, own tale. Now, I don't get to determine who is important and who is not, right? So I can't determine who will be benefited to this world and to humanity and who won't. In fact, if you judge purely by looking at them, people like Stephen Hawking, right, bound to a wheelchair, couldn't walk, may seem like a drain on society. He was one of the greatest thinkers that ever lived and progressed our understanding of the universe so far. Alan Turing, who was imprisoned for being homosexual, and if he did not exist and did not do the work he did, we wouldn't be talking on a computer right now. He is the father of computers. There's Ada Lovelace, who was a woman, Lord Byron's daughter, who did the first algorithm. If she didn't do that, again, we probably wouldn't be talking on a computer. It is not up to me to determine who is valued and who is not. And from the atheist perspective, and I want to make this really clear because this is really important on our perspective, we're kind of on a sort of ball of rock that's flying through the universe at some ridiculous speed, with asteroids and meteorites whizzing by us, comets whizzing by us. In 2019, one came between us and the moon. It was that close. It's like a bullet hitting your arm. Now, that would have wiped out all life on Earth, not just humans, all life on Earth had it hit us. So from the atheist perspective, no one's coming to save us. There's nobody that's going to step in and, sort of make things better. Nobody's going to, sort of lay down something that will prevent us from getting completely wiped out. To us, the universe is the most hostile place. It may take all humans working together to survive. And so they're not NPCs to me. To me, they are my brothers and sisters and others in humanity banding together to survive against the real enemy. Like, other nations aren't my enemy. My enemy is viruses. My enemy is space itself. My enemy is all these things that could destroy our species. That's my enemy.
Yeah.
So
I shouldn't, by the way, when I say NPC, I was being a little hyperbolic. I don't think that, because it actually, that was always like a thing that frustrated me when people look at that, and they're like, oh, they'll look at the past and they'll be same thing, they'll be like, oh, well, they're just doing this, and it's like, well, you don't think like these people thought about their decisions and made choices like everyone else? Like, that's pretty screwed up that you would think that way, So
yeah, and I get what you said, like, and I get sort of, I do sometimes have a love-hate relationship with ordinary people out there, my fellow humans. I get that sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes the deep questions aren't answered. I think sometimes I do have to remind myself of what people are capable of when they decide to work together. In the city that I live, somebody got their leg trapped in between a train and the platform kind of thing. And spontaneously, everybody at the platform came and like literally pushed the train off this guy so he could get his leg out. Just people coming together and working for a common cause. Now, I could sort of look at them as not meaning much in my life, but every single one of those people meant something to that guy at the time, regardless of whether they believed in the same things that he did, whether they believed in God, whether they didn't, doesn't matter. The point is that when we have a goal that we're working towards, it doesn't, as I said, I only need morality that's compatible with mine. I don't need people to believe the same thing. The preservation of humanity is enough. That's enough by itself. So I don't see people as meaningless. Everybody means something.
No, that's good. I don't personally like talking with you versus like certain other atheists. I mean, like this has been like a way more fruitful conversation, and like I think that we have maybe like similar in a way goals or something, but maybe just like a different way of looking at it, or different way to achieve it, which is very cool, interesting to talk about. So, but it's just I don't know, like most of the atheists I know in real life, or like that I've experienced or debated with, they're more like that hedonistic, like Reddit kind of atheist. Well, in general, like they'll say like lofty goals, but at the end of the day, like they don't actually care about other humans. And my worry is like when you look at like data of like people who are self-labeled atheists and stuff, like they, for example, like they don't donate as much as like religious people and stuff like that, or like donate with their time or stuff like that. So it's just interesting to see like the difference, or like especially in America when you pour over the data, like there's like people often say like Republicans are more selfish, but then if you actually and the things that they say are more selfish, right? Like they're literally in a way more selfish because it's all about like rugged individualism, right? But the way that they actually behave as a person is more giving. So it's always been like a weird dichotomy, because like their actions are different than what they're saying, right? Like they're saying rugged individualism, but like they all like would do exactly like what you're saying, or like they'll donate to like a certain cause, or like someone in their local community gets hurt, like they'll help them. Versus like a lot of like liberal people I know or have experienced, like they just want like everything to be taken care of by government, or like some Leviathan state, you know, like some disembodied thing is going to come and help all humanity, but like you know, or it's someone else's duty or job that the government's going to pay them to do, but it just never really works out that way. So
Well, a lot of atheists do believe in more of a social safety net, which is why that they may not donate as much. They may believe that the government should be taking care of the people because, well, it's kind of in the system that we live. It's elected to do exactly that. So I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. I also think it's as a sort of minority group in the US, atheists may not make as much as sort of other demographics. I've heard atheists vilified a lot as for sort of a you know, what to say, hedonist lifestyle kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, atheists, they do laugh a lot. They do not take things seriously, but the people that I know genuinely help people when they're in trouble, even other Christians and Islamic people. They provide a lot of support and help. I remember, you know, Cindy Lincoln was in trouble, and Atheist Junior just went out of his way to help her as much as possible, to the point where other Christians were saying, wow, that was a really good thing you did. And yeah, he's a really good guy. A lot of the people I've met are really good people. They will help. But they have a tendency to laugh at things and not take things seriously a lot of the time.
yeah.
You know, and sort of, yeah, they think that life is brief and fleeting. And so, you know, enjoy it as much as you can and help others through the struggle. So they may enjoy their lives a bit more. But that's due to, this is the only life I get. I may as well enjoy it. You know, I'll joke and laugh and try and have a good time as much as possible, but not at the detriment of others, is where I come from.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that makes sense. I just think sometimes the YOLO lifestyle, like you only live once, it's like it how do I explain it? Like not at the detriment of others, but in a way like it's obfuscated would be the word. Like for the short term, there is no negative drawback, but for the long term, there will be a drawback. And I guess that's what I was trying to like explain, is that like, especially for like women, like feminism and liberalism, like it's arguing these things that in the long run is actually negative for them, but they think it's a positive thing only because of the newfound freedom that they're getting, and then the temporarily choice and pleasure, right? And something as I've gotten older, I've realized, like, so for example, like I've cut out sugar recently, and then like you just taste like a strawberry, and you're like, oh my god, this strawberry is so great. So it's almost like the absence or denying yourself something actually makes it more meaningful and more impactful. That discipline in a way is good. And I guess like, but to like the liberal secularist liberal person or atheist person, they're usually going to be like, well, no, don't deny yourself that. Like you want that, do it, whatever, you know? And they're kind of like missing that component of like, yeah, sure, you can enjoy it now, but if you hold off a little bit, it's going to be even better. Or, you know, you're going to enjoy that strawberry even more. You know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, but I mean, I would absolutely disagree that liberalism and feminism in the long term is bad for society. I see it as very good for society. I see, you know, the origins of feminism in universal suffrage, which was absolutely good for society. It benefits society none to have an underprivileged class, you know, unable to contribute towards how the nation or the country is going. But what I notice is that, you know, well, like you're sort of asking them to relinquish these things for the sake of it being more pleasurable to have them afterwards. But I noticed that, as far as your own right to, these political stances, you're not denying yourself that. So
Oh
you're
no, I mean, I
expecting.
think we should. I think men obviously should have this same thing. I've always thought that was what was weird about the West is like they had this like a Christian dogma where like, oh, women can't be a hoe, blah 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 blah. But then their male children will be hoes, and like their male, like I'll be in the locker room, like when I was in
Be
high
what?
school.
Sorry, it sounds like you're
Hoes.
saying
Yeah,
hose.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like the men would be like, you know what I mean? Like in the U.S.,
No,
they'd be like. Okay, to explain it is like the U.S. they would like slut shame women often in the past.
right. I don't get it.
Yeah, so but then they'll never do it for men, and I always found that
Right.
hypocritical and weird.
It is.
Uh,
Yes.
because if it's not good for your daughter, why would you want it for your son as well? And that was
Well,
always
I
weird.
don't think we should slut shame anybody. I think that's bad for their well-being. I don't think that's good for anybody, like men or women.
So I have a question on that. I guess like, um, isn't shame a good motivator? Like when you look at Eastern
No,
cultures, for example, like they
no,
usually do
shame
better.
is the worst. No, shame is the worst motivator ever. It is
Really?
incredibly harmful. Yeah, I see shame as a useless emotion. It doesn't help in any way. If you actually talk to psychologists, shame is one of the negative emotions that you really should do away with. Now, we've got to classify what exactly shame is, because you've got guilt and then you've got shame. So, guilt is the feeling that you've done something wrong. One of your actions has caused harm. Shame is the internalization of that guilt, so that you're saying, I am a bad person. That is who I am. And that
Excuse me.
shame.
Then I agree with you, but I mean, like, I guess what I mean is, like, I think guilt is a good thing for societies to do, but I don't feel like
um
we're encouraging, like, a lot of guilt, if you will.
Only if it conflicts with your values. Like if guilt is good, if you're acting contrary to your values and contrary to what you want to uphold as your values, it is a good thing, because it allows you to realign yourself with the values that you do have and want to express. If you're saying, well, you should feel guilty for dressing a certain way or expressing yourself a certain way, no, absolutely not. It's not a good emotion for that. If you're denying self identity in order to sort of facilitate a guilty feeling because somebody else believes that you should be guilty, then no, that's not good at all.
But guilty is like guilt and fostering that guilt is a way that societies coerce certain behaviors. So for example, like in a workplace, right? Like
Mhm.
if you like a girl was wearing like showing all her cleavage and stuff in like a professional environment, like it's
Mhm.
unprofessional. And that's what I was
Right.
trying to bring up in the debate. Like that is unprofessional. People won't take her seriously, and she is objectifying herself in an unprofessional way. So like why should we normalize that? Why shouldn't we
No,
create like
she's
the guilt
she's not
around that in a sense? Or like
she's not objectifying herself. You don't objectify yourself. People objectify others. So the people sort of looking at her and going, oh, she is just an object to be used, they're the ones objectifying her. She's not objectifying herself.
well
Um,
then
there
what would be the
is,
word? Because it's not really maybe
well,
not
let
objectify,
me finish. Let me
sexualize.
finish. There is certain things that in a professional company, you ought not do if you do want to remain at that company, and that's the whole thing. Like, oughts and morals aren't built upon these things are. They're built upon ifs. You have a choice whether to do that, whether to stay in that company or not, and the company will decide. There will be consequences or outcomes for it, but if you're willing to accept the consequences and it is in alignment with your values, and you believe that you're doing the right thing, then you need not feel guilty about it. Because if that's the consequence, then that's the consequence. And if you want to embrace that consequence, so be it. That's your choice.
Just to clarify, did you say like
Yeah.
are not. I thought morals are ought statements, right?
They are, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess like when I was doing the debate with you guys, that's what I'm trying to say. Like religion or morals, like they have these laws or rulings or whatever, as in like you should ought to do these things. Like these are the best way to live a healthy life for the average person.
But I think they're based on ifs. So if you want to work in a highly professional industry, right, then don't show cleavage. You ought not to show cleavage. And that's sort of a moral system for that particular company. However, if you're working at Hooters, you can do that. In fact, it's encouraged. In fact, if you cover up, then they'll probably have a problem. Then if you want to work at Hooters, then you ought to show cleavage. So all of these things are built upon ifs, consequences of those being violated. So I don't see a problem with that. What I have a problem with is people going, well, that girl is just an object and a slut, because she's not. She's not. She's just a person who is deciding the correct path for her life because she has the autonomy to do that. And that is essential for that person's well-being. If she was told, hey, you cannot work where you want to work, you cannot do what you want to do, that would cause a negative outcome for their well-being. So I don't think we can violate that.
So that was like, I guess like the difference here is like you're saying that taking away a choice is a negative thing. And the way I'm trying to explain it is that the choice is bad, actually. Like they'll always have the choice regardless, to be honest. But coercing them or telling them why this is bad, and society trying to tell them why this is bad, is going to help more people select the better choice, or the choice that is actually long-term better for them, versus like the choice that is, it's negative, but they can choose it if they want to, right?
I don't see how the choice is bad. If somebody wants to work at Hooters and brings home money and raises a family and continues to have a good life and
would you
sort of
personally
helps
want like
people
your daughter or wife working at Hooters then?
They could, sure. I don't care.
But they could, and like you want them to, are different things, though.
Like,
like my daughter could, but I don't want her to. If I had
right, but so my preference would be to do what they want to do, to have the freedom to choose what they want to choose, to have a life that they enjoy and be happy. You've got to ask yourself, how much does your daughter's happiness mean to you? Does it matter if they're upset and not happy where they are working as opposed to somewhere that they enjoy working? Does that matter at all? I would say that it does.
Yeah, I mean, of course it matters a little bit, but how do I explain it? When you're making these choices, like these choices aren't just in like isolation per se. Like you're opening yourself to like other stuff, I guess. Like, so for example, like if I have a wife, right, and then I have my wife like work at a place where it was filled with like dudes who make 200 grand and they're all really good looking, the probability that there could be infidelity is like way higher, right? So like why would, and the same thing for me, right? Like if I'm always going to be working around supermodels, I would understand why my wife may be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, or you should try and limit your time with these people, or you know what I mean? Like, don't be too friendly, like have some sort of boundary.
Hussein, I have no worries about my wife cheating on me in the slightest.
No, I'm not saying you do. I'm just.
No. I'm saying that even if she worked around millionaires, I don't have any worries at all. I don't know why I would. Well, the whole thing is if my wife could be swayed by simply a big bank account and another guy, why would I want to be with her?
That's a good choice, a good answer.
Like if that sways her, instead of, if she chooses that, then yeah, I'd be absolutely devastated. But that is her choice, and if that she would make that choice, I don't think I want to be with her. And that's and I know she would never. Well, I guess the evidence says that she wouldn't make that choice. If she did, I would be absolutely devastated. But that is her choice to make, and it would show that she does not deserve me. That I have a lot to give, as far, and the thing is about it is, I personally, and this is just speaking for me, I am attracted to an intelligent woman. I love having conversations with them. I love, so working around supermodels would actually, they, it would not,
it wouldn't do anything
would
for
not
you,
sway me. It wouldn't do anything for me. I am an intellectualophile, I guess. I absolutely love having conversations. So what attracts me to my wife is that she is incredibly intelligent, a novel thinker, incredibly creative. I mean, there's all the other stuff, pretty, and all of that stuff. She's gorgeous, and
well, yeah, I guess what I mean
but...
is like if like, again, like the reason like society or Islam, or like even in the past, right, like the reason that they had these rules is to essentially limit the opportunity for like infidelity. Like a common, like I remember when I was growing up, like I watched some like thing.
Sorry, I just gotta say something. No supermodels can be intellectual, James Wolfe. Don't pin me on that, dude. Like, seriously, come on.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, don't want that generalization.
Yeah, no, that, look, supermodels can be as intellectual as anybody else. I'm just saying. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Hussein. You were talking.
Yeah, you're good. I was just saying, like, there used to be like, they talked about it in the news. They're like, oh, the new phenomenon of like a work wife or a work husband, and then they're like, is this cheating? Is this not cheating? And like, I used to think like, oh, that's kind of stupid. It's not cheating, blah 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 blah. And then I'm like, oh, now I'm thinking about it more. I'm like, I can kind of understand how it would be like you're opening yourself up to crossing boundaries. And then I've had it where like some women in my workplace were like way too comfortable with me in a sense. And I was like, yo, you have like a husband, like this is weird,
Okay.
And like, if
and you have a right to your boundaries, Hussein. Nobody's saying that you don't have a right to your whatever boundaries you choose to set. I just don't see. I mean, I'm monogamous myself. I don't place any expectations on other people if they have certain relationships. I don't. It's not up to me to say. It's not my. I don't see as having the authority to tell anybody else what to do. It's their life.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I understand like your thought process, and I actually like I can appreciate it in some ways. It's just, I think like if I was to, in a Kant way, extrapolate the way you think for everyone, I think society would go downhill. And I guess that's why I don't agree with it, obviously. But I think that you would. I think you would say the opposite, right? Like your way would be better, and my way would be downhill. So
right. I think that you don't know that it's going to go downhill. Like, you don't know that because we're not in the future.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm agnostic towards it.
No, I get what you mean. Yeah, and sort of, so progressiveness seems to have caused great revolutions in, sort of every area of technology and every area that I can sort of allude to. So that's why I'm progressive. It seems to get the best results. The increases in people's freedom to go into certain fields that they ordinarily wouldn't be able to get education that they ordinarily wouldn't be entitled to, seems to have served our society well, as far as sort of progressive technologies, cutting edge things, knowledge and gaining knowledge. So I don't see the downhill decline as far as progressive policy is concerned.
I have a question on that, I guess, like to retort on it, I guess, or like push you. Like when I look at technology, like I used to love it, and then now I'm like, well, now every technology that's being pushed is like a little hell receptacle in a way. Like if you look at like TikTok and like social media and like the actual, like there's some studies that were done on children and like how it's like detrimental to their mental health and like development, and
Sure.
And then you have that coinciding with like the love of freedom that like America in a way is culturally exported to the world, right? And like consumerism, it's like to me like the perfect blend of like hell is the only way to describe it, right? Because you're not preaching like that there's these, like, even in a philosophical sense, right? Like you're more than a pig, right? You're more than consuming goods, right? And I'm sure you as like a pretty educated person, you understand that like even even atheist people, they're like, oh, you know, just because I don't believe in God, right, doesn't mean I'm going to be like a hedonist, right? There's these higher pursuits, but we're not. It's hard to consume a higher pursuit, right? It's hard to.
Is it?
I mean, for maybe not for me and you, but like for the average person, I feel like we're just selling them TikTok and like mindless entertainment. And
so, why are you on TikTok if you don't like it?
Me personally,
yeah.
There's like,
I mean, you're on YouTube right now. Like,
yeah,
if technology has these downfalls, then why continue to use it?
So that's a good question. So here's the thing: I went to like Tunisia, and no one was using TikTok or any of these social medias, right? And Japan,
I don't use TikTok.
Yeah, and Japan too, right? And these are the more conservative cultures, and I loved it. Every minute, I was like barely touching my phone. I was just in the moment with friends and family, or like meeting people.
I'm sorry, you went to Japan and technology wasn't a thing.
No, it's a thing, but it's not. It's not like it wasn't like a main thing that to like the people that I was meeting, because they were just more involved in like living in the moment kind of thing, right?
Sure. And I mean, when I talk about technology, I'm not just talking about social media progress.
Sure.
What I'm talking about is sort of medical stuff, you know, unraveling the genetic code.
Oh no, that's cool.
Satinex, you know, all technology, not just, you know, technology that I might use. Even though I don't use TikTok, I don't use Facebook, I don't use Twitter. I don't do any of this stuff. I'm only really on YouTube because someone pressured me into it. But you know, I'm fine with it. I choose what I will use, and that's okay. The whole point is that people will choose to either use TikTok or not use TikTok, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. They will, if the consequences are something bad, they live with those consequences. It doesn't, you know, I don't have a right to say, hey, you can't use this technology. I think that there are detriments to it, and I think that science will identify those and present it to parents. Action will be taken. You know, these things that we sort of say, hey, we invent these technology and it's got drawbacks. We've always overcome them before. You know, some people invented leaded petrol. We took it out of, it was harmful. We took it out of circulation. Not to say that it didn't have problems, but yeah, we try to minimize the harm that these technologies do to people. I don't see why social media will be any different. If it is truly harmful, then we will address it. It's not something that we just go, oh, well, you know, let's just leave it.
Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, personally, I mean, I don't see them rolling out like, you know, like warning labels for social media or anything.
Well, here's the problem, Hussein, that people have said this kind of stuff about technology throughout the ages, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. That's the whole point of sci-fi, right?
Right. Well, not just that, but sort of people. I remember seeing a pamphlet that was sort of distributed in I think the 1800s or whatever, with electricity lines strangling horses and, you know, basically killing people. They thought that electricity, like the 5G towers, are going to destroy the world. You know, this has been done ever since technology has been a thing. I'm sure someone was jumping up and down saying the wheel was dangerous, you know, back in the caveman time or whatever. You know, this has been done forever. You know, people said video games would destroy humanity. People said that rock music would destroy humanity. You know, it was awful and stuff. I remember seeing a letter from a teacher saying that the advent of leaded pencils and pens, kids didn't know how to write with slate and chalk anymore, and it was a huge thing that was going to destroy education, and it hasn't. You know, that's the way technology goes. We have new technology, it outdates other stuff. People complain kids aren't communicating these days, they just don't communicate in the way that they used to. They use electronic means. None of this is particularly bad. It just means that the ways that they used to be doing things are different. And people have always said it's the decline of society. Computers are the decline of society. Rock music is the decline of society. It has never been the decline of society. Ever.
I guess to push back, like I would say, like for example, certain things in rap music or rock music, like what they promote in a sense is bad. Now the thing is like I enjoy it still sometimes, right? But I'm also someone who like, oh, it's just media, right? And you're gonna consume the media and you shouldn't let it affect you. But now here's the thing, like, it kind of depends on like parental discretion, right? So if they're showing their like 5-year-old it, that's pretty dumb and bad, But if you're showing like a 8, 17, 16-year-old, 15-year-old, 14-year-old, and they're like educated enough to know like, hey, it's just media, it's not real, you shouldn't behave in this certain manner, but you can enjoy the music kind of thing. Then that makes a lot more sense, So
well, we can study these things, Hussein. I mean, the whole thing about computer games was that these violent computer games were going to make kids violent. Like they were going to cause blood in the streets, kind of thing. And the studies actually show that kids who did play computer games were less prone to violence. Now that may be because the kids that owned computers, back in the 90s or whatever, were the richer kids and therefore, had a tendency to get into less violence. I'm not saying computer games did that, but what they sort of said about them just did not happen. Like this whole idea of, those violent computer games will definitely lead to violence. That is not the case. And in fact, may be the opposite. So, those predictions of where technology will take us, it's kind of, we can never tell where the technology would take us. I don't think anybody predicted the ubiquitousness of the internet. It was just unpredictable. Where did it take us? Yeah, there's a whole load of misinformation and wrong stuff out there, too much information, all of these problems. But at the same time, we can talk about worldviews in a civil manner, both on opposite sides of the world. Which is amazing and fantastic. It's incredible.
Oh no, that's really cool. I definitely I like the internet, or like I grew up on like the old internet where it's just mostly nerds, so I really liked it. New stuff, it's like it's not that bad either, but we can still do all the stuff we did then. So I guess it's just the internet's mainstream now, you know what I mean? So the target audience is different. So but
yes and no. I think it caters to anybody out there. I think it's sort of
there's no niche
microcosm of the world. Yeah, it's sort of fringe elements and mainstream stuff. I think it really does just connect people. That's all it does. All it does is just shift data around and route it. That's all it does.
Yeah, of course.
But what has flowed on from that has been incredible. So forgive me, Hussein, I'm going to ask a really tough question. So can you tell me what religion has discovered about our reality?
What has religion discovered about our reality?
Sure. Since the religious books were published, what has religion actually contributed as far as discovery about our reality?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as like Islam, I know like the first person who was talking about the scientific method was like a Muslim, and there's even like
golden age of Islam,
and then I know that there's like things in the Quran like with reference to like what a fetus looks like and stuff like that. There's certain they call it like scientific miracles in the Quran that the argument from a theist perspective is that there would be no way to know about it back then. And, so therefore, this is proof that it's true. And there's one was like the fetus. There was some other one. I forgot. I need to look these up for my debate, actually.
Yeah, I'm aware of the fetus one and everything. I guess.
But I was going to say like more so like to like, I would say that there's like a huge thing about community. It's discovered, or like it's shown us that humans need community. Humans need,
Sure.
in a way, a place to meet, gather with like-minded individuals. Like it's reinforced that. I'd say like it reinforces like good values and like a good way to behave. But what is it discovered? There's those scientific things. In a way, this is actually really hard.
Yeah, it's a hard question.
It's a good one because it's hard to say, because outside of like biblical claims and Quranic claims that were scientific, the only other thing I can think of is like, in a way, it's psychology before psychology.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
Or sociology as well. So
Sociology. Okay. No, interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I do see your point about community. I think from my perspective, we don't need religion for community. I have an online community here. I've got, community to sort of go to kind of thing. I don't see us as needing religion for that. There's all kinds of secular communities, from bowls clubs to, sort of return service league that we have over here for veterans and things like that. People do have communities without religion. I don't see it as being necessary.
I guess it's like a community for a higher purpose, maybe. Like human beings like usually want a higher purpose, like you were saying earlier. And the higher purpose in like atheism isn't. That's why like a lot of like modern secular atheist people, like maybe not like in your case, but like a lot of them are like communists or like socialists. Like they believe in this like higher utopianism in a way. They're drawn to that because it's still a higher purpose, still a higher calling, if you will.
Well, I mean, I've got a higher purpose, but it just doesn't involve a god. Like I'm quite fine with my purpose of, spreading a message of peace and love between people in order to make the human race thrive. Basically, I'm fine with that. That's good enough for me. I don't know why I would need a god to sanction that or encourage it. I can choose my own purpose.
You can. Do you believe in free will?
Okay.
I was going to ask about that because we keep using the word choice, and I'm wondering.
Yeah, I do. I'm kind of a compatibilist. So I suppose I should clarify. Most things are deterministic. That's obvious. Most things are deterministic. Agents, I think we do have free will. I think that there was a book on neurological pathways and neurology, and the way that neuroplasticity works is that it generally fills in gaps to solve problems. So it basically conforms to problems. But in the way that plastic explosive does, sometimes when faced with something incredibly difficult, it has a tendency to explode and branch off on a neural pathway that seems completely random. And I think in that true creative freedom, that sort of arbitrary thing is maybe the source of free will. So mostly no, I think there is a seed of free will there created by the neuroplasticity and the loop back of what we take in. But that's a difficult question, because I certainly act like we've got free will. I act like my choices are my own.
To be fair, that's how I always thought about it. I said, like, this philosophical question is kind of dumb to me. Like, I never got it because, like, it doesn't do us any good. We have to act as if it exists because that's how we perceive it. So,
well, there's a lot of philosophical questions that do us no good. Sort of so hard solipsism, for instance. Is this a simulation? Like, we can't solve that at the moment. It's completely unsolvable. It doesn't really do us any good to think about it. But in the thinking about it, we kind of expand our minds and we consider things that are unconsiderable. So I don't see it as particularly useless. But determinism is one of those things where I get what they're saying, and they sort of have merit, but I could do something completely random and they would say, well, that was determined, you were determined to do that. So no matter how hard I try, I couldn't demonstrate that things are either completely determined or there is free will, because no matter what I did, you could just say, hey, it's determined to do that. So yeah, I don't know about that one. I kind of lean towards free will, though. I lean toward compatibilism.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of funny because I think you have like some answers that are in agreement with religion, but from an atheist perspective. So I think it's really interesting that when like, how do I explain it? There's like things that science prove or things that like atheists can deductively or inductively think about, and then they come to the same conclusion as religion. But religion just says like, this is what it is, it's because God's revealing it, right? Per se. But I guess in your guys' case, like it would be like someone was just really smart and thought about it and then wrote it as a book. Because
Possibly,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
we don't know. But there's nothing that leads me to believe that a god did any of this. I mean, if I can come up with it, somebody ages ago who was intelligent, way more intelligent than me, could certainly come up with it. And there's certain things that we know they're good or bad for humans, kind of thing. There's certain things like not storing waste near your camp or something. It wouldn't take a genius to realize that waste makes you sick. That's people believed that way back when we had miasma theory of disease, where they thought the smell made you sick, kind of thing. But we know now that it's not the smell at all. But that would still be something that they would say then: don't store waste near people, kind of thing. So, I think that a lot of these things are just people looking for the best way to live and the well-being of people. And so if you're interested in the well-being of people, you're going to come up with essentially the same answers, because people are people. They generally want the same things. They want safety, security, sort of enjoyment. They generally want all the same things. So it doesn't surprise me that we have same outcomes. And there's the thing, Hussein, like between like a secular humanist and a Christian humanist, like somebody who's Christian who puts people first, there's not a lot of difference in morality. Like there's really almost no difference, maybe one or two small things. So, I don't see it as, oh, well, I can't, I shouldn't share my morals or my beliefs with this person. I come out to wherever I come out, and that's fine.
Yeah. No, I wasn't, by the way, like I'm not saying like, all atheists are like hedonist shitters, or something like that. So
yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's
so I linked this is some of the stuff that I was talking about, like the scientific facts in the Holy Quran. They talk about like, like water, essentially like everything has water in it that's alive. So then there's like the Big Bang theory, the Big Crunch theory, embryology, sky protection, meaning of the seas. Is a pretty good site. And it has some of the stuff about it. I don't foresee how like someone back then would know all that, but it's interesting. Maybe you want to review it on your own time, or if you want to go over it.
Yeah, sure. I've probably seen most of them, kind of thing. I have seen a lot of debates, kind of thing. I find the some of them aren't as good as. Sorry, I'm just going to try and undo something.
Yeah,
I'll grab that. Yeah, totally professional streaming service from my end.
No, you're good.
Trust me.
And to be fair, by the way, like I guess like, or to explain, so from what I've been watching or like learning about or reading, it's essentially like if God did exist, like the whole point from what I'm hearing from religions or from the Quran and Islam It's saying that like he isn't going to spell it out for you. It is something that you have to research and seek the knowledge and then believe it. And then there's also like
Why?
even why?
Why?
Because it wouldn't be like a test or like a anything like that if you just told you hey, I exist, like here you go, kind of thing.
But if he wants me to know that he exists, wouldn't that be far simpler?
Well, yeah, it'd be simpler, but it gets rid of like the whole point of life. Because it's not like Christianity, by the way. Like, how like Christians say like, oh, we're in earth because like Adam and Eve sinned. It's not like that.
Yeah.
God in the Quran, God forgives Adam and Eve and then just sends them down and says this is like a test for humanity. So it is totally different. It's not like a punishment or anything. So
No, I get that. That's fine. It's just, sort of, so if God made humans and he gave us minds in which to reason with, and it appears that reasoning is the best way to find out things, so logical and rational reasoning,
yeah,
and then expects us to not use logical and rational reasoning in order to believe something and instead use some sort of faith or believe it without justification, I don't understand why a God would do that if he wants us to believe in him.
yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the argument would be that you should use the reason that God gave you to, and like you can read into the Quran or read into, essentially just like read into the Quran and the Bible and all that stuff, and then you would come to the conclusions of like that God does exist. Now, here's the thing. It gets interesting. I'm gonna help make the atheist argument in a sense. There's interesting data that says that like atheists usually or typically have higher IQ, so they have like more more reason than religious people, right? And then they come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist. So it's a very interesting counter to what
I don't know about that. I think so. IQ is poorly defined. It doesn't necessarily say anything to the truth of your beliefs. It's not. There's been very high IQ people like Newton, for instance, was probably an absolute genius. Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, he discovered gravity. He thought that he could turn lead into gold via alchemy. He had some really wrong beliefs. That doesn't mean like so. Just being intelligent doesn't mean you believe the right thing. That's got.
Oh no, I agree. I agree with you. By the way, I don't even think IQ is relevant, but there's some people who they cling to that. So.
Well, I mean, all I can do is use the reason and logic that I have. So we've got the best system, and this is where we go to methodology, for instance. Like, so you compare methods of how we find things out. For instance, you want to cross the road, right? So there's going to be certain methods of finding a better result of what the truth is than other methods. For instance, if you listen and look both ways and things like that, that is a way better method of finding out what is true than asking a friend, kind of thing, or looking how the traffic was 2 days ago, kind of thing, to make your choice. There are certain methodologies that are better than others. Now, with religion, it seems like a lot of it is based upon, well, it seems to me anyway, a lot of it is based upon faith, basically having a belief without proper justification for that belief. I think that that sort of is antithetical to what I do to find out what is real and what isn't real, because I base it upon sort of empiricism and sort of logic, rationality, and all of these things. So the idea that I should sort of come to the conclusion of a God based upon somebody who wrote a story that I've never met, and we don't know what happened back then for sure. I can't choose to believe that because I want to believe it.
This would get to so you could ask, like, is there any true theist in the sense that like that doesn't have just faith they know? And I'm not so sure about that. I mean, like, if I had to be 100% honest, right? Like, I would say, like, I think that God exists. I think there's proofs of God,
Right.
like, all around us. But, and so I choose to believe that God exists, right? But I would always say, like, I'm choosing to believe, per se, because in the grand scheme of things, like, until we die, if I had to be 100% intellectually honest, right? Like, until we die, and, like,
Mm.
you know, I'm just nothing, right? Or I die and I get to go to heaven, then, like, you know, I'll know, right? So until then, like, no one can really know and no one can really say. So people should say that I believe this. That's why I always thought, like, agnosticism, right, makes a lot of sense, per se, which
Sure.
is always why I thought, like, flat atheism was weird to me, because I was like, how can you definitely know, you know? So
Well, okay, so a couple of things to cover there, absolutely. So, um, well, I'll start with the last thing because that's interesting. That when an atheist says, you know, I believe that God doesn't exist, it's not about definitely knowing. It's just what you believe. So they're not even claiming to know that a God doesn't exist because it's about belief, not knowledge, right? Um, so in that case, like a agnostic, I think in the terms you're using it, because people use these terms differently in colloquial conversation as opposed to philosophy of religion, for instance.
yeah,
But when you say an agnostic says, well, I don't know if a God exists, but doesn't believe it kind of thing, that's different than an atheist that says, I believe a God does not exist, but I'm not claiming to know that for sure. So the adding of the word definitely there, I'm not definitely saying a God doesn't exist. It's just what I believe based upon the evidence and reasoning that I have.
okay,
Um, so I think you're ascribing to atheists a lot more confidence in their beliefs than what they would actually present.
yeah, I think I am,
Um,
maybe because, like, cosmic
well,
skeptic.
can I
Sorry.
just address the whole idea of you choose to believe? And I'm in the camp of stochastic involuntarism. Jeez, that is so hard to say. So stochastic voluntarism is basically when you volunteer, you can choose what you believe and what you don't believe, right? Which I don't agree with. I don't think we choose what we believe and what we don't believe. Um, so um, I think we're convinced of things, and sometimes it's ourselves that like convince us of this. But I don't think the inception of a belief is a choice. I really don't think so. I think that you know we hear certain stuff and we see certain stuff and we take it all in, and that either convinces us or it doesn't convince us. And sort of so. You know, the thing that I say to people who say, well, you can choose to believe is, well, can you just choose not to believe, Hussein? Can you just go, well, now I don't believe in God, just as a choice?
It gets into a very interesting question,
Right.
because you could, but I
Would
don't
you know
know.
deep down that you're just sort of saying it and not believing it kind of thing? Could you just go,
So
well, now I don't believe, and that's, you know, it?
yeah, so that's an interesting question, because there's you know, like, the mind over matter thing, saying, like, mind over matter, where, like, people have done, like,
Yeah, yeah,
almost like insane things, like inhuman things, just sheer will and mind. Um,
yeah. And I mean, you can do like affirmations and convince yourself of stuff kind of thing. You can repeat it over and over and over until you believe it kind of thing.
yes. So I
But
was gonna say, the irony, right, is that, like, I could say, like, oh, atheists are coping and they're telling themselves every day that God doesn't exist, and the same could be
right,
said of theists. So it gets into, like, a really interesting question. I think, like, the one cool thing I could say about this conversation is that what I'll give atheists as well as a lot of theists is, like, at least they would fit the definition of, like, a philosopher, like a knowledge seeker, in a sense, which I think is very cool. Cool. It's very respectable. Like, I like it. So
well, I mean, I'm, you know, I want to know the truth above all. Like, I want to know, um, and if there is a God, I want to know, but I'm not going to settle with a minimal amount of evidence kind of thing, because it's such a big question and it's such a large claim for me to take on. Like, it is a huge thing, and probably the most important question in the history of humanity. I mean, if a God does exist, that is one of the most, probably the most important thing in the history of humanity. So I don't know why I would take a lower level of evidence than, you know, somebody's claim that, you know, they've played in the NBA or something like that. You know, why would I take a lower standard of evidence and say, hey, somebody wrote a book? That to me is a very low standard, and I cannot commit to that on such a low standard of evidence. Because it should be compelling enough that I can go, okay, I have confidence in that. And in that, I don't think a faith should be required. It should be completely evident all by itself. And to me, it's not. And I guess to a majority of the world, it's not, who don't believe in Islam.
I'm now you got me reading like this Wikipedia where they're talking about like quantum mechanics, and then they're talking about how quantum mechanics is paradoxical, but it makes sense. And
sure,
they said that it's the nearest analogy to God is the is the idea of quantum mechanics.
Yeah,
like, it's paradoxical and shouldn't make sense, but it just does.
Yeah, I mean, some people's, like, you know, if you're talking about the God of Spinoza, for instance, he thought God was physics and the way that objects interact with one another. It wasn't per se a agent as such. It was just, to Spinoza and Einstein, God was the way that the universe, the physics of the universe and the way that the universe behaved. So theirs was a very materialistic God kind of thing. I probably wouldn't use that word because it's a loaded word. Like, you know, Spinoza's God suggests something supernatural, and, you know, I don't. So I generally don't use that word. I also don't like, you know, you mentioned, you know, they're just coping kind of thing, and I generally don't do that. I think that atheists do that a lot. They sort of go, oh, that person doesn't really believe; they're just convinced themselves or something. And I generally will give people, you know, even to the point that I'm being trolled mercilessly, the benefit of the doubt that they are reflecting what they actually believe.
You know, of course, and I agree. I follow that. Like, why would someone on a serious topic lie to me about that?
Well, you get a lot of Christian pre-suppers who are like, no, you know that a God exists, and they'll tell you that, and you're like, well, you know, if I just say, well, you know, you don't know, you don't believe in a God, and you're saying I believe in a God, that's just two people sitting there yelling at one another. It's pointless. It's absolutely pointless. So, yeah.
Now I'm wondering, I had something I wanted to ask. I have a question. So Cosmic Skeptic said something, and I'm sure maybe it relates to you or other atheists, but if I had to like look at it and analyze it, it was interesting to see the psychology of it. So he was talking about like, he's like religion, God, the afterlife. He's like, it keeps me up at night. Like, I think about it all the time, you know. And he was being actually really honestly, you know, he's like, you know, sometimes like I wonder, like, you know, is it actually true, right? And it was really weird because it was almost like every day he's searching for the thing that will convince him that God exists. That's like what I got out of it. And I don't know if that's just a feeling that I took from it, or me being hopeful or whatever, that he would convert to something, or believe God exists, at least the minimum. But and that maybe is me coping, right? But
no, I don't think so. No, well, I think people are different. I wouldn't
think about.
You know, I wouldn't say that it keeps me up at night, or I spend all my time looking for a God. I really don't. It doesn't, like the amount that sort of, you know, I do religious debates, but I do debates on evolution. I do debates on, you know, flat Earth kind of thing, like things that don't really have a lot to do with God. So it doesn't keep me up a lot. I certainly have put in a lot of time thinking about it, going over the arguments people present, because if they want to present arguments, I do like to go over them, if I'm not doing something else. I do like to actually entertain it. And this is the thing, you can entertain an idea without accepting it. That's the hallmark of having an open mind. You entertain this idea, you consider it honestly and fairly. I certainly have done that. I certainly given a fair amount of time to thinking about that. So, but I don't think I'm like cosmic skip. I don't think I've like missed a wink of sleep for it.
He may have used it colloquially too. I mean, like I don't know his life, right? Like I don't know if he's actually just kept up at night all day.
Yeah, and I haven't devoted like a lot of time really thinking about it that much, and certainly not Allah as opposed to the Christian God and the gods of Hindu. I probably in my childhood I used to like Greek mythology, so I really paid attention to those gods from Greek mythology kind of thing. I loved them. They were fantastic. They did all kinds of stupid stuff, but I haven't devoted a great deal of my life to it. I think
people like Greek mythology because they're relatable and it's like a story. When you're trying to quantify like the unquantifiable, that is like God. If in my case, I think he exists. In your case, he doesn't, right? But just thinking about that is really hard in a sense, because if he did exist, it would be something that we can't even comprehend, right? So it's really hard to I guess to even like these conversations in general are kind of like hard to have. So it makes sense why people were very turned on to like Greek mythology or paganism
I don't know.
in general.
I don't know. I mean, I've never believed paganism. I don't find these conversations difficult to have at all, to be honest with you. They're fine for me. I'm not sure if you find them hard or not. I'm sorry if you do, Hussein. It's just
no, I don't. Sometimes it's more like what I want to say or how I should say it per se. So the wrong because this is like my second like that was my first debate and this is like my second
this isn't a debate.
Yeah,
this certainly isn't a debate. You would certainly get a lot more pushback on me if this was a debate.
Yeah, of course. Very cordial.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I really love debates. I really love, but when I'm having a discussion or an interview or just a discussion with somebody, I'm not gonna put my worldview in the octagon kind of thing. Like really hammer it against somebody else's, and see which wins basically, because that's not what I'm here to do. I think it's important to sort of realize that a debate is supposed to be a challenge. It's supposed to challenge your idea, and I love that. I love my ideas being challenged, so that's why I enjoy it. But these are good too. These discussions are good too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it is really interesting to think about in the sense that like there's a in the Wikipedia section on it, and also what I've seen is like my friends were talking to me about this. They're like, "Why are you even doing this debate?" And I was like thinking about it.
The one on modern day debate kind of thing.
Yeah, and the one I'm going to be doing. And I was just like, to be honest, like you could argue it's like a fruitless affair because like I have my position, you have your position, and the audience may have their already preconceived bias as well. So in a sense, it is like just fruitless. But I don't know. I had fun, and then I think being challenged will help refine both people's arguments and make them think about it a little bit more. So I want to say
fun. Why is it fruitless if you had fun doing it?
Well, I don't think so. That's what I told them. I think I'm like, you guys are being dumb. Like it's fruitless. It's not fruitless, but it was just funny to hear that because they saw that I was like digging into the comments, trying to defend Islam. And
you went to the comment section.
Yeah, I went into the trenches, man. That was a mistake.
I never do that. Look, tons of people disagree with me. That's fine. That's good. sure. It's just I don't feel a need to, like, my presentation in a debate is my presentation. That's what I presented. That's the entirety of what I presented. I don't need to go into the debates to defend my position because that's what I've done in the debate. And what's really weird is you see these people going into debates, and Nadir is famous for this. I don't know if you know of Nadir. He's famous for going to the debates and telling everybody that he won, kind of thing, that he demolished the opponents. And it's like, well, if you did that, you wouldn't have to tell people. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to convince people that you won a debate if you did win. You know, and I hate the idea of somebody winning a debate. It kind of is. It's weird to me. It's more like a popularity thing.
No, it is, yeah. And it's also like, for example, like if this was 100 years ago, right? You could easily claim like every theist won, right? Because everyone was religious, right? And then now more people are like irreligious, right? It's easy for the atheists to say that they won. So it's kind of like you're saying, it's a popularity contest, and it's kind of dumb to look at even look at it that way.
I don't think it should be that. And if you go back to sort of ancient Greek times, where, you know, I really hold up debate as being sort of, you know, in the ancient Greek times, they'll assemble in the amphitheater and really challenge, you know, sort of Aristotle versus, you know, Epicurus and things like that. You know, people really giving their ideas against one another. And even though some of those ideas, as you said, you know, Aristotle is kind of a bit passé now, we don't pay a lot of attention to him. It's that challenging of ideas that produced the thought that we had. You know, there would be no Epicurus if there wasn't an Aristotle, and there would be no this person if, you know, it's that challenge of ideas that produces the great thoughts of that day. So I think, you know, and it seems stupid, like I'm comparing, you know, an internet debate show to the great thinkers of Greece, but, you know, the whole point is there. Like, we go into a public square and we put up these ideas and put them against one another, and then let people think about them. It's what humans have done forever.
Yeah.
I don't see anything worthless or fruitless in it. It's just what humans do. We share our ideas, the ideas with merit and that are best for us come out, and people think about it, and other people come up with ideas. This is the thing I'm saying. Nobody's like an non-player. Like, somebody who sees a debate may say something, you know, put in a comment about something, and makes me think. And then that leads to me saying something else on another debate. Humanity is a great chain of communication that spreads out and can produce amazing things. So Hussein, never ever think that sharing your ideas is fruitless.
Yeah.
Even if I totally disagree with them, never fruitless, because we just don't know what the fruit of that may be.
Yeah.
You know, so
I have another question on the topic of like God. So there's I think it was Karl Popper. He said like the whole topic of God, because it would be like a supernatural entity, is like outside the peer review of science anyways. So like there's no way to scientifically ever prove God. And I think most people would like agree with that. The closest I could even get is those examples from the Quran that are scientifically true, because they're telling. So like, is there anything that could ever, I guess, like change your mind that is not scientific per se?
I don't think that I could make a definitive, could science prove God or not prove God. The whole thing about science is we don't know what we can prove until we actually get there. You know, there was sort of a point where we said the atom is the smallest particle. We are never getting beyond the atom. That is it. That is the limits of our knowledge. And then we have, you know, quarks and smaller things, subatomic particles kind of thing. Yeah. So I would never sort of say, hey, this is outside of science, because we don't know what science can prove until we go to actually do it. I do understand that the way that science works is that we don't include supernatural things. It is only things of the natural world. That is a constraint of methodological naturalism. That is a constraint of it, and it's for a good reason. It's because during the Enlightenment, people in general went, well, if the answer's God, it doesn't. There are too that is not an answer for why these things are happening. Look up the Enlightenment, all of the formations of methodological naturalism, how it came about. There's a good reason for that, but there is no reason why that can't lead to a God if it actually exists. And indeed, if there is a God, we should see, and if that God is doing things in the world, we ought to see that, or we should see that in some way, because if God even tampers slightly with the physics, then the physics should represent that. That isn't what we see, but I won't say that, that can't happen. It's just there's nothing that would suggest that there is any supernatural thing tampering with physics at the moment, or making miracles happen, or doing anything on Earth. As far as it looks like, it's just natural causation. Random chance happens occasionally. Of course, everything's deterministic, but things just happen.
Well, I have a question. So
yeah,
and that always is like been like a weird irony to me in a way. So like, I think they said like the probability of like the Big Bang happening is like 0.00000000000, like crap ton, right? And then like 1,
right,
and then there's like the probability of like evolution, and then life on Earth, and all these things are like, it is so low, right? And and that's where you get into like the what is it, the fine tuning argument in a sense,
sure,
right? Like how I guess like how as like an atheist can that be kind of like just waved away in a sense?
right. So there's two things. Is that I don't know what caused the formation of the universe, and I don't know if a universe would have formed if those constraints were different. So it may be this is the only way a universe can form with these particular parameters. So you sort of say, well, if the parameters were different, life wouldn't have formed. Well, maybe this is the only way parameters could have formed. If the parameters were different, a different universe may form with different kind of life, like something completely unrecognizable to us. That may be true. I don't know, but nobody seems to know. If you add in stuff like multiverse, it could be that universes are popping in and out of it, sort of collapsing and popping out constantly. Add trillions and trillions and trillions of them, and then the chances of life occurring is kind of 1, because if that happens for eternity, then you're going to get life. It will happen if you have enough universes popping into existence. Is that the case? I don't know. That's the thing. All of these probabilities, and the big one for fine tuning was a Bayesian analysis. And Bayesian analysis assumes previous parameters and then takes probability from it. The problem with Bayesian analysis is that if your previous parameters are incorrect, your outcome of that probability study is useless, absolutely useless. So we just don't know enough to know whether fine-tuning is a correct statement or an incorrect statement. If multiverse is true, then fine-tuning is out the window. Like if trillions and trillions of universes are popping in and out of existence every second, it's a worthless argument, because
where
the
are they even getting that multiverse? Do you know? Because like I don't even.
Yeah, so there's sort of the thought behind it is there's sort of, they say there's 11 dimensions kind of thing, and only 4 of them are readily apparent to us. Now, the reason why it's 11 is because when we do maths in quantum realms, it seems to work when there's 11 dimensions kind of thing. It's not theory because no one can absolutely demonstrate it yet, but that is one of the things. So what was proposed is that in these other dimensions, and now I'm not a physicist, so I'm really struggling to bring it up. There's membranes, basically, these membranes that occupy other dimensions that clash occasionally, and it's the clash that causes a universe to emerge. But because there's sort of so many membranes and they basically clash at all different points in the other 7 dimensions, they're popping up all the time kind of thing. Now, I don't even know how we could prove this, and I'm certainly not smart enough to understand the maths that leads them to believe this is true, but that's why they think it's true. It's because multiverse makes the math work. That doesn't mean it's true. It just means the math works.
Yeah, for now, yeah. It could be
but that's what they
something, and then the math works another way.
Sure. Absolutely. So this isn't, accepted theory among scientists just because the math work doesn't mean that is true.
You think those people are atheists? Because it'd be ironic, right? If they're believing in like 11 dimensions that you can't see, but you know what I mean?
I'm sure. Some of them are atheists. Sure. I mean, there's nothing about atheism which precludes other dimensions that you can't see. There's nothing about that at all. In fact, time is it's one of those things where we only see a slice of it at a time. Like as we're sort of falling through time, we're only seeing the present. We don't see the future, and we don't see the past. We can record the past, but we don't see it. So that is sort of a dimension where we only see a sliver of it at a time. It's very, very strange. It's almost like if a two-dimensional person was falling down kind of thing, and they only saw one floor of a building at a time. It's very, very strange that we can see the other ones, but only a sliver of the fourth one. It's very, very odd. Yeah. So why is that? I would love to know. If you've got an answer for me, I would love to know, Hussein. But I do want a reason why. How is this done? What is the process behind it? I think that's important. We've gone like over 2 hours now, so what I might do is sort of ask anybody in the audience if you've got any questions for Hussein that you want to throw in. If not, we'll probably wrap up here. If that's okay with you.
Yeah. It's 11:30, and I have work tomorrow, so I can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm sorry. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
And I'm fine for some questions, by the way, if they have any, and then if not, I'll just say adieu.
So, do you feel like I've answered all of your questions from my worldview, and you have a better understanding of where atheists are sort of coming from?
I do, but it kind of just leaves me with more in a sense, because like I see all these things that we're talking about, and I'm like, well, it's simple, dude. It's just God, like you know what I mean? And like, there's so much like beauty in physics in the world, and like all this fine tuning.
Yeah, I think that too.
And
well, I think there's beauty in physics. I'm not sure about fine tuning. I don't think anything's been fine tuned for us.
What I mean is just like we can see the beauty in all this stuff around us, right? And and how it works, and how it's so consistent, like how life's a miracle, and all that. And then like I see it.
Well, I don't think life's a miracle. That's the thing. I mean, it's beautiful. Well, it's beautiful until you get a virus attack you, and you're absolutely destroyed by it, kind of thing.
It's a miracle that it exists to begin with, is what I mean.
I think it's a miracle. I think that that natural processes can easily cause life. I don't think there's anything miraculous about it. I mean, it's certainly amazing and wonderful and all of these things, and beautiful, absolutely. But I don't see the miracle there.
Well, maybe one day, I don't know, even as a probability though, like the probability is so low,
Yeah, no, I don't, because I don't know, like when we're doing probability study, we have to know the parameters. We have to know, so really, what's our sample size?
Well, that's the problem. There's only one. There's only one right now.
Right. We have a sample size of 1.
Yeah.
Or if you're talking planets, we have a sample size of 7 or so. We can't really, or 6. Yeah. Hang on, 6 or 7. Do they count in Pluto? Anyway, that's our sample size. So it's not, I don't know how you can make a deterministic sort of probability statement based upon a universe sample size of 1. Unless you're doing Bayesian analysis, and that has priors. You have to have the priors right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do some priors like, oh, well, if you assume a God wants us to exist, the chances, of it happening are this amount, kind of thing.
I was just reading about Bayesian analysis and how essentially you're saying like, if you look at all this data and then by that data, it's a more logical conclusion that God exists. But then the problem is
Probable.
that an atheist,
Probable.
yeah, probable. And then, but the problem is like an atheist would also do this and just say, oh, it's more probable that he doesn't exist.
Right. Because it all depends on the priors that you're putting in. So I don't know how anybody can sort of give a probability to the universe existing.
Yeah.
It seems to just be a statement of assumption of these priors kind of thing, to me anyway. And so, yeah, to me, it's just sort of, well, I don't know where the universe came from. And if it was a God, great, but show me that. And sort of a Bayesian probability study that assumes that the universe was created in some way, it just isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has any questions. Oh, someone's got a question for me. Okay, what? I'll answer your question. Should we send basic life to other planets panspermia? Sure, why not? Sure, why not? We should send ourselves to other planets.
You think so?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think we should focus resources on the Earth we have now, but maybe that's just a different thing to take.
The problem with that is one direct large asteroid strike or some kind of, killer virus or some kind of something that could essentially wipe us out. Being on another planet sort of gives it a better chance. It's not so much to get off this planet, it's insurance in case something happens to us.
No,
we
yeah,
have another job. That's where I can.
Yeah.
It's not to give up on this planet. It's just to have a backup and to sort of project ourselves over. It's sort of like the Polynesians who sailed boats across to islands kind of thing. Why? Because it was there. That's what we've always done as humans. Like let's extend our boundaries. Let's explore, settle, leap. I think there's something very noble about that as well.
Do you think humans are a virus in that sense then?
No. Okay. No. I think
I've just heard that before, in a sense, because we do have that weird adventure inclination where like we want to go out, like you're saying, and do that and explore and like.
Yeah. But a lot of animals do that. Wolves range a lot. They range very, very large distances. There's other animals that do that. I don't see us as viruses. I see us as just an organism. And there's a lot of stuff I can go down and some people think Gaia, like the Earth, is just one big organism, a macroorganism kind of thing. And if that's the case, then we're the sort of seed it's shooting off to somewhere else to populate it. Where we're basically a propagation tool kind of thing, which would be cool, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't believe that, but that sounds cool. It sounds like a good book idea, kind of thing. Yeah, fun idea. Okay, well, that's about it. The only question I had was for me, which is fine. I'm good with that one. No worries at all. But thank you so much, Hussein. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And if you ever want to debate in the future, I certainly will be up for it. I'm more than happy to. I love debate and conversations. But thank you for joining me, everybody. It's been a blast. Do be kind to yourself and each other. Lots of love, peeps.